Good morning. So you don't see a whole lot of me up here. Usually I'm downstairs with the kids. I used to teach the 1 to 5 year olds in Sunday school, and now I teach the middle school kids over there. So when you hear them screaming or having fun, that's my fault. Sorry. As I hope they're having fun. Hard to tell with kids, right? So a little bit about myself before we begin. My name is Young Gil Fleischer. My parents are in the back or somewhere. There's my mom. And my brother and sister also live pretty close by. We're all within a 5-minute radius of each other, and we all have kids. I've been married about 14 years, and I got 3 kids. There's a term in New York where I was living at the time called a DINK, which is dual income, no kids. Because I was a DINK for like 10 years, it was great. Right? We had money, went to Hawaii and Aruba, and DINK. It's a thing. And then we had our daughter Amalia, and we decided we didn't want to raise a kid in New York City. Which, if you've been to New York, it's very money-centric, right? And we didn't envision our child growing up in that kind of a culture. And so we were like, well, where should we go? We can go to the beach or the grandparents. And I voted for the beach. And then Mira was like, we're going to Denver. I was like, all right. And so we came to Denver, and then a couple years later, my brother was like, I'm going to suffer, I'm going to sacrifice to come to Denver. And he came here, and he loves it. And then my sister was like, oh, everyone else is there, I might as well go too. And now we're all here, and we all got, I think, 7 grandkids all in total now for my parents. And yeah. Good times. Yeah, no, it's tiring. So my kids are 4, 2, and 0.6. 0.6. Not quite yet a year. And he's the best one, right? The little one. Because his needs are easy. You just give him some milk and carry him around, and he falls asleep. You know, the 2-year-old, he's potty training, right? So, something to, the conversations you have about kids change. You never imagine, what you say about poo and pee and this kind of stuff before you have kids. When you have kids, it's natural. But the point is, life is busy, right? Life is crazy. Those of you who have kids, when you just focus on work, right? The first few years when I was a DINK, we really just focused on work. We were both very professionally focused. My wife was a project manager. I was a developer. And we live in the New York City life, working 60 hours a week, and then, going to the city, having nice clothes, having nice food, and then you have kids, right? And then the work doesn't get less complicated, right? You just have to do it in less time, because now you got to give time for the kids. And then something's got to give, right? So you sleep less. And my brother, bless his heart, a couple weeks ago we were sitting on the couch. He came to our house. We were sitting on the chair, and he's like, "I saw a picture of you when Amalia was born. You had so much energy." And I was like, oh, gee, thanks. Bright-eyed. And this morning, those of you who are parents, you run on coffee and caffeine. At least I do. Up at 4 or 5 cooking and then making them breakfast. And then 8 o'clock, drop off at school, come home, have coffee, have my tea. I drink chai tea, then go to work. And it's really, really hard to find time to focus on stuff that's not immediately asking for your attention. Because the kids are crying, they had a bad night of sleep, they come into room 2 a.m. and snot coming down their face. And that becomes your life, right? It becomes, I have to keep these little human beings alive for at least 18 years. And there's 3 of them, so that's like what? Every time you have another one, it resets the clock. I love my kids, right? Well, my wife and I were very happily married. But, I shouldn't say but. And it's a great sense of joy, but it's also tiring, right? And then it's hard to focus on stuff that isn't immediately in your face, right? Like your life of prayer, your relationship with God, The basic foundational elements of our faith oftentimes fall to the wayside. When you're young and it's just work, that also happens, right? You have the deadlines. You got to get stuff in by a certain time, right? You got to beat the traffic. You got to wake up early and get ready for your presentation or whatever it is you're doing. And you don't have time to meditate or pray. And it's that death of 1,000 cuts, right? It's not like you had. Some people have a crisis of faith where they have something really bad happen to them and it just jerks their foundation away. Most people, in my experience, have the opposite, right? It's just apathy. They just go through life, and every day they get more and more distant. And one moment they turn around and go, oh, I don't need God. I'll just be tired on my own. And then, their kids grow up, and they leave the house, and then they're alone, right? It's just them and their spouse, empty nesters. And there's that when they had all that activity and all that noise, they could kind of subsist on their stored energy, like their fat, the sacrifices and stuff they learned in their youth. But once they leave the house, right, and then they're all alone again, and then they have that quietness again, and then they're empty inside because they've burned out to some extent. And so the topic I wanted to talk about today is something that's near and dear to my heart, because I want to be 70, 80 years old with my flock of grandchildren and my nice house and hang out with them and not be this bitter old man. Right? I want to be a happy old man. And to me, the essence of that, the thing that drives the ability to have that, are these basic foundational elements of faith. Right? It's the simple stuff. Because everything complicated is built on top of those simple things, right? My daughter, who is 4 years old, watches Peppa Pig, and there's this episode where she learns to ice skate. It's push, push, glide, push, push, glide. And she walks to me, Papa, I can skate now. I'm like, no. Right? You can't do the complicated stuff until you can do the simple stuff, right? If you can do the simple stuff really, really well, the complicated stuff is easier. And in business, this is a big deal, right? If you don't know how to balance your spreadsheets as a business, if you can't manage cash flow, doesn't matter how good your product is, you're going to go out of business. Right? In faith, it's the same thing. Doesn't matter, how good you look when you're up here giving a sermon or greeting your friends at church. If your home life is rotten, that's a terrible place to be in. But when your basics are good, right? When your home life is good, when your emotional health is good, when your physical health is good, these all kind of add together into this wellness factor. And if you can maintain that, the other stuff is a lot easier, right? You're not coming from, it's like if it was a math equation, you're not starting from -10 because you have your backache and your side hurts and your children don't talk to you and you're trying to pretend to be happy. But if you're like a +10, your children love you, your health is good, it's easier to be happy. And so, to me, in order to have that end goal of being a happy grandparent, to being a successful person in life, really relies on these basic elements of faith and life. Right? I don't think you can separate, your life of faith from your life of business, from your life of parenthood. It's just your life, right? And the core characteristics that make you successful in those things really should be harmonious. Right? The things that make you a good businessman should also make you a good father. You should spend time with people you care about. You should invest in them. And if you only do that to your business and not to your kids are going to hate you. Or at least not care about you, right? In masonry, or in masonry construction rather, there's this idea of a cornerstone. And the cornerstone is the block you put down first, right? It's that first stone you put down, and every other stone references that first stone. And the idea is, as long as your cornerstone is put in well and is very stable, everything else is easier because you have that reference stone. and you're building up on top of it, right? It becomes the foundation for everything else, the beginning point. I think in faith we have our cornerstones as well. We have those life experiences, those things that have shaped our sense of morality, our sense of faith, that everything else builds upon, the foundational elements. And it's important that those things are healthy and those things make sense. Because when that foundation falls apart, it's a terrible place to be in. I don't know about you guys, but I have friends who grew up very, very hardcore religious. I'm a very middle of the road kind of person. They grew up really hardcore religious, and they had one bad experience, and then just boom, overnight, just changed. Became really hateful, or really negative, or really angry people. Right? Like when the cornerstones of your faith shatter, you question everything. That's a hard place to be in. It's hard to come back from that. I know people who have, and people who are on the journey back from that, but better to, fix it before it becomes a problem, right? To have a healthy foundation so that, when difficult times come, it's not going to rock your world, right? Suffering is inevitable. Everybody has a hard day. Everybody has a hard year sometimes. The idea, one of the things I like about Christianity is this concept of seasons in faith, right? Sometimes it's summer, things are great. Sometimes it's winter, things are cold and bitter. And you can go sledding. But, if you have those strong foundations, and you have that strong community to support you, you can get past that, right? And you can continue to grow. And so, before I go into what my cornerstones of faith are, I just want to put one caveat, right? Everyone's faith is unique. No two people believe the same thing. You can be part of the same church, part of the same family. You could be twins. At some point, there's some divergence in your understanding of how the world works, right? And so what works for me doesn't necessarily work for you. I think, generally speaking, being part of a community of faith, we agree on a lot of the big stuff, but maybe not, right? So I did want to share a little bit about what my cornerstones of faith are, as sort of an example, but they may not be yours, and that's okay, right? It's important that you find cornerstones that work for you. And as you mature and change, these cornerstones can change as well. The things I believed as an 18-year-old aren't the same things I believe today. Some of the foundational stuff, I'm lucky in that they are the same, like my belief in God. But some stuff has changed. Right? I'll get to it later. But truth versus love. When I was growing up, I was all about truth. I have to be right. Being right is the most important thing. And Dave Mahardy is smiling. Do you remember? You used to teach yeah. I went to high school and end of middle school in Denver, and Dave Mahardy was one of the, I taught his kids in Sunday school, and he taught me in Sunday school, kind of thing. Maybe not, I don't remember. A long time ago. We go back years and years, right? But it's okay for these cornerstones to change and adapt and grow as we grow in our walk of faith and in our maturity. But it's important to have them. It's important to take care of them and to keep them healthy and strong. Because otherwise, like a house of cards, all just comes tumbling down. So my 3 cornerstones, I'll talk about them very broadly first, and a little bit into each of them, are my relationship with God, my relationship with God, my belief in balance being important, and truth versus love. I'll talk about each of those. And like I said, they're different for everybody, and it's not saying you need my cornerstones, right? You need yours. For the first one, relationship with God, I believe in my heart of hearts that if everyone could understand how much God loves them and how valuable they are as a human being, the world would be a very different place. Right? Our sense of self-worth are the things that we would, agree to do, how we would treat each other would be fundamentally different. As a young person, I don't know if boy is the right word, adolescent. As a young adolescent, I was a very angry and depressed child. I was about 300 pounds at one point. I have pictures of me in high school. My face is like a balloon. And that's not a physically healthy place to be, and it's not an emotionally healthy place to be. I went through a lot of teasing growing up, and I dealt with that by eating. Even to this day, I stress eat. So if you see me shoveling my face, I'm having a bad day. And the King Soopers near our house had these deals, 10 pints for $10 of ice cream. I'd go and, here you go, give me my 10 pints of ice cream. And I'd wait for Valentine's Day and Halloween. The day afterwards, I'd load up on candy, right? Because I've been always very, very frugal about money. I wanted to get a good deal, but at the same time, I wanted to feel good. And when your sense of worth comes from food, that's not a very healthy place to be, right? I did 2 years of mission work after high school before going to college. And during that time, actually about half a year before that, I really started searching, praying and studying religion and studying theology and psychology and sociology. And I did my 2 years of mission work. And through the course of that, I really developed a profound love for God. When I was a depressed child, it was very hard for me to be quiet. It was hard for me to be in a quiet place because I always felt judged. Because it's like a snowballing cycle, right? Like you feel bad, you eat food, you get fat, and you feel bad, right? People make fun of you, and you got acne, and your knees hurt. You have no energy. And it's just this self-perpetuating cycle of misery. And what sort of got me out of that was I guess I'm a very intellectual person, so study, right? Prayer and study, and being able to find that quiet voice of God inside of myself. Learning to meditate. Being okay in the silence. And to me, most importantly, being able to tell that voice that says you're not enough to go shut up. I'd be able to look in the mirror. I used to every day, smile in the mirror for like 5 minutes. And it really hurt when you start doing it because you're not used to smiling. But I feel like, if you can't love yourself, if you can't feel that you're an important person, that you're loved by God, the other stuff is really hard to do, right? To feel like you're a valuable person is really difficult. I guess, I just said it right there, right? If you don't feel like you're a valuable person, it's hard to see yourself as a valuable person. It's hard to have self-confidence. It's hard to be happy to be alone. And so I spent a long time, those 2 years of mission work really focusing on that. And that did me a world of good, right? To this day, that's my number one foundation, is that understanding that I'm a child of God, right? Before anything else, regardless of how badly I fail in business, luckily I haven't, I've done very well for myself, but regardless of how badly I do there, I have that key foundation of knowing that I'm cherished, right? And my parents love me. And that gives me a starting point. That no matter what else happens, I know this is true. And I know I'm extraordinarily fortunate to have that. Most people don't. And it wasn't easy to develop it. Like I was talking with some friends last night about the sermon, and I am extraordinarily blessed, right? Even outside of faith, even before being born, to be born in this time with flushing toilets and electricity and no one trying to kill me because my dad is Jewish. I'm white. I'm a man. As sad as it is to say, these things all make my life easier. And then on top of that, to have parents who care about me, to have a community of faith that makes sense, to have siblings that don't hate my guts, to be able to watch the cousins play and not, hate each other. These all kind of, I am extraordinarily blessed. But it's intentional, right? It's not like it happened just because I sat there one day and said, God, give me love. And we worked at it. We came back here. My brother moved back here. My sister moved back here. We made those choices that allowed these things to take place. Which brings me to my second point, which is balance. Right? To me, balance is fundamental. Like, if you can't be balanced in life, it is really difficult to adapt. Because life happens. Right? Whether you want it or not, life goes on. And if you're imbalanced as a person, it's very hard to deal with those changes in life. At least that's my experience. It's like a bodybuilder, right? If all you do is your upper body, and you skip leg day, you look kind of goofy. When I was in college, it was a big thing to work out. And you see these guys, these massive upper bodies, and they always wear the wife beaters, right? The spaghetti strap kind of shirts to show off their big pecs and their big arms and their itty bitty legs. And it's kind of funny. That's true physically. It's also true spiritually and intellectually and emotionally. Right? You as a human being are a multifaceted creature. If all you do is read books and study, and your ability to have relationship atrophies, it's really hard to have relationships, not surprisingly. If all you do is like people who and religion is one of those things too, right? Like, if all you focus on is religion and all you do is study the Bible, good, but that means you don't know how to relate to people. You don't know how to love people, right? Faith in action is a very important part of faith. You can be very intellectual, and if you can't round that out with some other aspects, you become very one-dimensional. And I think one of the things I like about our theology is the idea that we're supposed to be spiritual beings. Business too, right? I work like all of you do, right? Work for a living, and people who just only focus on business, they get kind of weird. I lived in New York. You see these 50-year-old guys who go partying every night and can't have a relationship, can't have kids, get drunk and woo, good on you. But when they take a step back, they can't be alone because it's miserable. And to me, being middle of the road is very important, right? Not being too much one way, not being too much the other. I happen to be a Republican, but I'm a very moderate Republican. I'm not talking about politics, right? Religion's enough of a divisive thing. But with anything, right? Whether it's work-life balance, spending time with your kids. If you don't spend time with your kids, it's hard to build a relationship with them, right? And you're missing out on all that joy those kids can bring you. Because all you do is work. Your kids are 20, and you go, oh, how'd that happen? I have colleagues who, a lot of divorce happens in business in the upper echelons. When you make like a partner, or like a managing partner, a minor partner, it's really hard to hold a relationship because that becomes to be successful there, you have to sacrifice everything else, and the result of that is an unfulfilling life. It's been my direct experience working with these kind of people. And so I made a declaration very early on in my career in business is I never wanted to be rich. I always wanted to be comfortable. Right? I never wanted to have to worry about where my paycheck's coming from, worry about if I could go on vacation and pay the bills. But at the same time, I don't want to have to not see my kids for 6 months because I got to chase that contract. And so it's a very intentional choice that I made, and I have put aside things for that purpose. Right? I won't travel more than 6 days a month. I made that very strong. In my business, we do consulting, and FaceTime is very, very important. And I could have been, more wealthy if I had sacrificed all that. Said I'm willing to travel every week, but then Mira would have left me, right? Because she can't deal with that. And then where would I be? I'd be rich and alone. And I know enough people like that I don't want that for myself. The final cornerstone for me is truth versus love. This is one that I embraced after being married. And one thing that Mira really taught me is the idea that truth is important, but love is importanter. right? It's the idea of subject and object. If you read the Divine Principle, it talks a lot about that. You have these dualities. You have the what and you have the why, right? Truth is very much the why. It's how the sun moves around the earth, or how the earth moves around the sun, sorry. It's how the mechanics of something works. But without the why, those mechanics are heartless. And so growing up, I was all about truth. Like I said earlier, truth was big on my heart. And so I'd always try to find the best way to do something. And after I became a manager and then a director, it's like, really in business, good enough is oftentimes good enough. You don't have to have the perfect thing. You spend 20 years developing something, never release it to market, you're never going to have a business. But even with raising children, right? Bill Cosby, he got off the deep end in the recent years, right? But when I was growing up, he was a very funny guy, a very artistic individual, and he had this whole spiel about, parents don't want justice. Parents don't care who's right and wrong. Parents want quiet, right? When the kids are screaming in the back car, you don't care who's wrong. You want them to love each other. I think God is the same way. I think fundamentally God is a parent. It's not to say truth isn't important, right? Truth dictates a lot of very important stuff. If you don't know how to build a bridge, people are going to die going on your bridge, right? Truth is important. But, if you don't have the element of love to inform and guide that truth, you become a very cold person. As a husband, if you tell your wife, you have to wash dishes this way, you have to clean your house this way, she's going to dump you, unless she's a saint. If you tell your kids, you always have to have A's or I'm never going to love you. I know that's a thing in some communities. And the people who go through that, they have an emotional burden the rest of their life. And so becoming a parent, becoming a husband, learning to live with another person, taught me that truth is important, but it has to be tempered with love. And if you think about the why of the universe, right? If you are a God, why bother with creating all this? What's the driving force? Sure, there's lots of cool stuff in the universe, light and gravity, and maybe at some point we'll have spaceships and go in hyperdrive and do cool stuff like that. But why, right? Why bother with all of that heartache? It must not have been easy, right? If you're God, to build the universe. That must have taken some time and some investment and some effort. And then have a bunch of ungrateful kids, right, who always question your existence and hate each other and always killing each other. That's got to hurt. Just having 3 kids and watching them fight is difficult. So love, right? To me, third foundation is good to have truth, good to know the best way to do something, but knowing when it doesn't matter, when love trumps all, right? And in my life, those 3 things have been sort of the bedrock that everything else is built upon. To date, I've been very fortunate, right? I have a loving family. I have a loving wife. I have a solid career. I have a car that doesn't break down. I got a house. We go on vacations. I love God. I don't feel emptiness in my heart, right? And to me, it's because I've been very intentional about maintaining these foundational things. Sure, I don't pray all the time, and prayer wasn't one of my foundational things. And maybe it should be for you. I don't know, right? But to me, it's that relationship with God, and being able to still look at my children and have a godly heart towards them. When they pee on the carpet, to not go and smack them. Babies poo. It just happens, right? And you'd love for it to stay in the diaper. But that doesn't happen. It's just, up their back and out there wherever. And we're sitting there at 2 a.m. because the baby's crying, wiping the butts and things. And regardless of how difficult those things become, having those foundational elements makes those things much more bearable. Right? Because when those hard times come, I have those foundations to fall back on. I have those basics that give me a firm stance, so life doesn't push me over. And if I lost my job tomorrow, that's okay. I'll get another job. Hope I don't lose my kids. That would suck. Right? But people have had that happen to them. That's a thing, right? It's a terrible, terrible thing, but it happens. People's parents say, people's kids say, I hate you, I hate you, I hate you. That's like, ripping your heart out. I would assume. I've never had it happen to me. I did it to my mom. When I was an angry adolescent, I hate you, Mom. And that hurt. But she's still here, right? She didn't crumble and fall to that heartache. And luckily I grew past that. So I don't want to keep you too long, so I'll wrap shortly. I think that when I was going through those hard times as a youth, and even now, right, when hard times happen, suffering, hardship is inevitable. Suffering is an option, right? Life happens, stuff happens, difficulties happen, and if you have if your foundations are good, right? I'm not saying you're not going to suffer and it's not going to hurt, because that's just happen as part of life, right? But those foundations can help you overcome, right? That love of God, that being able to see from God's perspective, being able to balance your time well, being able to love. To me, these things allow me to overcome the hardships when they come, right? And nip bad things in the bud before they really grow and escalate. And I do recognize that I am very fortunate, right? Like I said earlier, I am very blessed. And I know that's not everyone's situation. I don't mean this as a critique of any kind or anything like that, but it's just a reminder that as we go through life to remember to focus on these foundational things. And hopefully in doing that, as life happens, that we can move with it and grow beyond it, and hopefully come out the other side happier for it. And maybe not happier for it, but happier in spite of it, maybe. So I guess I should leave it with that, right? That's a good place to stop, and I need to pray. So, homework, or you're always supposed to finish a presentation by giving someone an action to do. And so my action for you is, I guess, find some time to be introspective. I know life is crazy and it's difficult, but find a few minutes a day to look at those things that build you up, that make you who you are, that inform your walk of faith and your walk of business and your walk of parenthood and familyhood and intellect. And find what those foundational things are and investigate them, look at them, see if those are the right things. And if they aren't, it's not, you can always change, right? Every day is a new day. And if they are the right things, focus on strengthening them. Focus on doing those foundational, basic things that allow those things to remain strong. Please join me in prayer. Dear Heavenly Parent, just thank you for the opportunities that we have to be a community of faith, to be a community of friends, to be surrounded by people who care about us, to be able to constantly better ourselves and grow our hearts and grow our minds and be embracing. We pray that not only can we grow ourselves, but we can use that as an avenue to grow the world, to leave a positive, right? To always not just find good relationships, but build good relationships, to be there for each other, and to build, in essence, a healthy community of faith. We pray that we can, in this week, that we can be reminded to, think of you and think of each other and think of ourselves too, right? And most importantly, to love, right? To We constantly find ways to grow our heart to become more like you so we can shine your light into the world. Pray this is Young Amir, the Fleischer Plus Central family. Aju.